Let's take a step back to the summer of 2025, specifically July 2nd, 2025. Now, everyone is still talking about that, Ripple Bank, the national bank charter license from the OCC that Ripple applied for. Yes, it got conditional approval. We know that this is still a priority to get that, full on approval. Back in December, this did get conditional approval. It's a big deal. But there's an update within that announcement from Brad that's even more important. And it really goes back to the whole idea of the title of this video. Ripple being injected into the US banking system with the Federal Reserve. We already know that banks are starting to integrate blockchain tech. They're starting to tap into these new technologies using, private company initiatives and also tapping into specific, public blockchain initiatives as well. We go back to that post from Brad. Now, again, stopping right at the National Trust Bank Charter License. Yeah, it's a huge deal. It's great. But down here, we also applied for a Fed Master account. This is a big deal because this provides us an insight into what Ripple is trying to do. They are trying to integrate themselves within the US banking system through the biggest name possible, the central bank of the US, aka the Fed. Because if they get this approval, this would allow them access to hold ROUSD reserves directly with the Fed and provide an additional layer of security to future-proof trust in ROUSD. Now, you might be asking, Nick, why are you bringing up something from July of 2025? It is February of 2026. What the hell? Well, you guys probably remember me posting about this update from the OCC. This is from Comptroller Jonathan Gold, the 32nd Comptroller of the currency. The OCC is supporting a healthy economy that provides the American people with access to banking services that meet their unique needs by aligning innovation with proper supervision. Now, within this, the title of this quote or this article is, "These tech companies are becoming banks as regulators open the door." Now, if we look down here, we have the fintech industry is undergoing a fundamental shift in how it views the federal regulatory perimeter. With Revolut now pursuing a de novo charter route, the era of fintechs acting merely as front ends for traditional banks is rapidly drawing to a close. After years of regulatory gridlock, a new wave of approval suggests that the path to becoming a real bank is finally opening up for the digital elite. Now, what they're talking about is also the idea of all of these major players getting this National Trust Bank Charter license, because this allows them to essentially become banks. Now, the same Jonathan Gold is also quoted over here. New entrants into the federal banking sector and are good for consumers, the banking industry, and the economy. They provide access to new products, services, and sources of credit to consumers and ensure a dynamic, competitive, and diverse banking system. The OCC will continue to provide a path for traditional and innovative approaches to financial services to ensure that the federal banking system keeps pace with the evolution of finance and supports a modern economy. Again, this is clear confirmation that a lot of these players, like Ripple, are officially becoming banks. But also, in order to do that, we also need a connection to the Fed, which is also why, on top of Ripple applying for that national bank charter license from the OCC, they also applied for that Fed Master account. Now, on top of this announcement, we go over here. This is from February 10th. This is why I'm bringing up all of this old news. The Fed to grant crypto firms limited payment access as market structure bill remains stuck. The Federal Reserve plans to introduce restricted skinny master accounts for select crypto and fintech firms before year end, offering limited payment system access as comprehensive cryptocurrency legislation remains stalled in Congress. This is a big deal because, again, it allows these players to have limited payment system access into the Federal Reserve System of the US. Now, we do know from CoinMarketCap Circle and the Blockchain Payments Consortium have backed the Fed's proposal for limited crypto payment accounts, but banking associations are concerned about expanding central bank access. Of course, it's all of the bankers. Again, this kind of goes hand in hand with Clarity. Guys, I guess we could blame Coinbase for this one too, right? Coinbase is the problem here. You know, we need to go after Coinbase. Obviously, that's just a joke, but again, the bankers are always trying to block things like this. But the fact that we now have a proposal from the Fed allowing limited crypto payment accounts, aka skinny accounts, that's what they're basically called, skinny master accounts. This goes to show you just how eager the Fed is to tap into blockchain-based technology. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, which is, of course, the connections between Ripple and the Fed. Do you guys remember the US Faster Payments Council? So this is an industry-led membership organization whose vision is a world-class payment system where every person or organization can safely and securely pay anyone, anywhere, at any time, and with near immediate funds availability. By design, the FPC encourages a diverse range of perspectives and is open to all stakeholders in the US payment system. Now you might say, all right, well, this doesn't really matter. What is this group? Well, look at the leadership behind this group. All right, you have massive names like Walmart, Netflix, Home Depot, things like that. But then you also have major banks, First National Bankers Bank. If we scroll down a little bit more, you also have the Clearinghouse, you have Visa, you have ACI Worldwide. Down here, you also have Charles Schwab, major banks as well. American Express is on here. NASDAQ is on here. There is a ton of major names. Even the Federal Reserve Financial Services is on here. And then you also have Ripple. That's right. Ripple is on here. Goldman Sachs is on here. The Central Bank and Trust is on here. JP Morgan is on here. You have BNY. You kind of get the picture, right? Major players, crazy financial giants, and they're all working on this group to essentially streamline payments in the US, make sure that the US financial system is up to date. Now, Ripple has been working with the US Faster Payments Council for a very long time. Back in 2023, they actually put out a full survey regarding how to streamline payments. And then also, recently, they put out a full document with Ripple, and this was all regarding blockchain and crypto and payments transforming the way money moves. And then they also put out another document, which was stablecoins for faster payments. Now, it's crazy because, again, when we think about the US Faster Payments Council, this is an absolute giant in the US. But this is not where things, really kind of stop or end, if you will, for connections back to the Fed. We have over here, and I said from, Bank XRP, I said massive find, Ripple and the Federal Reserve. If Ripple gets a payment account, it would be massive for their stablecoin business. Remember that the success of RLUSD means that Ripple no longer needs to sell XRP for a revenue source. Tether made $10 billion in 2025 for reference. Now, this is the official update. This is actually from Ripple. They wrote this to the Fed. We have here Ripple, the Federal Reserve, docket OP 1877 could redefine global liquidity. If Ripple secures a payment account, RLUSD reserves would sit directly at the Fed, eliminating commercial bank counterparty risk. Why it matters? Direct settlement on Fed rails, cementing XRP as the premier bridge asset, institutional grade stability for RLUSD. And again, when we think about this, this goes all the way back to those skinny master accounts. Here is the full-on document from Ripple. So this got written on February 6th of this year. This is to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. And we have down here, Ripple Labs Inc. welcomes the opportunity to comment on the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System's request for information regarding the proposed Reserve Bank payment account prototype. As a leader in enterprise blockchain, stablecoin, and cross-border payment solutions, Ripple is committed to the safety, efficiency, and modernization of the U.S. payment system. This is wild. Ripple thanks the board for its initiative in exploring tailored account structures that reflect the evolving landscape of digital finance. The Federal Reserve's objective to support payments innovation through modernized risk management is critical as liquidity increasingly flows through high-velocity, real-time digital asset infrastructure. Our input aims to assist the board in refining the payment account prototype to ensure it serves as a robust macroprudential tool that enhances systemic resilience and secures U.S. economic leadership. This is huge. Now, you might say, all right, well, it really doesn't matter. It's not essentially the idea that this is confirming that Ripple's working with the Fed. What it does mean and what it does show is that Ripple is fully committed to attempting or at least trying to work with the Fed to streamline and ultimately modernize the US payment system. At the same exact time that they're already on major organization bodies like, for example, the US Faster Payments Council, which is led by major global banks, specifically the largest US banks as well. Now, on top of that, we also got another video clip regarding this as well. This is from Bank XRP. Now, this is about 7 minutes long, so I'm obviously going to speed this up by about roughly like 1.5. I know that it's a little bit of a lengthy video. If you guys do want, you can speed up the video as well, or if it's too fast, you could slow it down regardless. But we have here that Ripple just dropped a comment letter to the Federal Reserve. This is only a proposal and prototype concept that would let qualified non-banks like Ripple hold stablecoin reserves directly at the Fed, potentially reducing counterparty risk for RLUSD. It's a submission in response to the Fed's call for ideas on payment system innovation. No approval yet, just Ripple putting forward a thoughtful prototype. Huge if it advances, but still early stage. Now, it is very early stage. However, we're already starting to see some of the big moves happening, like, for example, the OCC approving those national trust bank charter licenses. Now the Fed is, open to having these limited payment access, skinny master accounts granted for crypto firms. So this could definitely still be a possibility right now, but check this out. I'm going to speed it up. Just listen closely.
So what you're looking at here, it's way more than just a letter. Think of it as a detailed blueprint from Ripple, one of the giants in digital finance, sent straight to the US Federal Reserve. And what's inside could literally change the future of money in the US and honestly, maybe the world. So what happens when a company that lives and breathes blockchain tech talks directly to the institution that controls the US dollar? Well, the stakes get incredibly high. We're talking about everything from the stability of our financial markets to whether the dollar stays on top in the new digital age. So yeah, let's dive in and break this down. All right, here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to look at what the Fed is actually trying to do. Then we'll get into Ripple's advice and the 4 huge upgrades they think are non-negotiable. After that, we'll connect the dots on why this matters for stability and fairness, and then we'll zoom out to see what it all means for the future of money itself. So what's kicking all this off? Well, the Federal Reserve isn't blind. They see the financial world is going digital and fast. To keep up, they've floated an idea to basically modernize the entire plumbing of the US financial system, trying to build a solid, secure bridge to this new digital economy. At the very heart of this idea is something they're calling a payment account, or a PA prototype. And this right here is the really game-changing part. For the very first time, it would let certain regulated non-bank companies, like stablecoin issuers, have an account directly with the Fed. And this slide, well, it lays it out perfectly. The old way, over on the left, means these new tech companies have to go through a traditional bank. That adds cost, it slows everything down, and it's risky. Because what if that bank has a problem? The proposed new way on the right, it cuts out that middleman. The goal, a system that's faster, safer, and a whole lot more transparent. Okay, so that's the setup. The Fed put this idea out there and asked for comments. And this is where Ripple comes in, dropping a super detailed analysis based on more than a decade of actually working in this space. And yeah, they've got the chops to back it up. We're talking about a company that's been deep in enterprise blockchain since 2012. They have their own stablecoin, they've got over 75 financial licenses all around the globe, and they run their own massive payment platform. They know both sides of the coin, traditional finance and the new digital world. All right, so this gets us to the real meat of their letter. Ripple basically says, hey, we love the idea, but for this to actually work safely and effectively, you need these 4 critical upgrades. Okay, first things first, Ripple jumps right into one of the biggest issues. How do you keep the markets from freaking out during a crisis? Their first recommendation is all about building a safety valve for the whole system. So Ripple's first major fix is to give these new accounts limited access to the Fed's discount window. Think of it like an emergency line of credit. Now, this isn't a bailout, it's a pressure release valve. Imagine there's a panic and everyone wants their money out of a stablecoin at once. The issuer might have to sell its US Treasury bonds super fast to get cash. This upgrade lets them use those bonds as collateral for a short-term loan instead of fire selling them and crashing the market for everyone. It's a huge macro stability tool. Okay, that was number 1. Now, for the second big upgrade. This one is all about leveling the playing field and cutting down on risk throughout the entire financial system. This one is just so important for safety and fairness. So the Fed's first draft said these accounts would earn 0 interest. Ripple points out that this is basically a liquidity tax. It forces stablecoin companies to park their cash reserves in commercial banks just so they can earn some kind of return. The fix? Pay a competitive interest rate. That way, these companies are encouraged to keep their reserves at the Fed, which is literally the safest place on the planet. And that massively reduces risk for everybody. Now, Ripple's third point, this one is super practical. They're saying the account size the Fed proposed is just way, way too small for the real world. So the Fed's idea was to cap these accounts at $500 million. Now that might sound like a lot of money to you and me, but for a massive global payments company, it's nothing. It's a huge bottleneck. Their daily transaction volumes could blow past that in a few hours, forcing them to push money into riskier channels, which is the exact opposite of what regulators want. So Ripple's fix is honestly just common sense. Get rid of that random static number. Instead, use a proportional limit, something like 10% of a company's total assets. This lets the account grow as the company grows, keeping all those massive dollar flows right where the Fed can see and supervise them. It just makes sense. And that takes us to the 4th and final upgrade, the last piece of the puzzle. This is all about making the new system actually useful for the kind of payments we all make every day. The Fed's initial plan totally left out ACH services. You know, ACH, that's the network for things like your direct deposit, your paycheck, paying your bills online. Ripple says leaving that out creates a fragmented and clunky system. Their solution is really simple. Allow for pre-funded ACH. That means the company has to have the cash sitting in its Fed account before any payment goes out. This gives these innovators the tools they need to function, and this is the key part. It creates absolutely zero credit risk for the Fed. Okay, so we've walked through those 4 kind of technical points. Now let's zoom out and see what it's all about. It's all building towards one big goal, a financial system that is both rock solid stable and truly fair. And this is really the bottom line. The whole point of these upgrades is to spark competition and bring our payment system into the 21st century. But, and you can't miss this, it's designed to do all of that without extending the federal safety net. No bailouts, no deposit insurance for these new kinds of companies. And Ripple makes this crystal clear, by the way. This new payment account would be a limited, low-risk tool just for settling payments. The full-blown master account, the one with all the bells and whistles and access to credit, that would stay exclusively for traditional banks who have a totally different role in our economy. So let's bring it all home. What's the big picture here? What's the vision Ripple is really painting? Well, it's not about tearing down the old system. It's about connecting it to what's next. This line from their letter just nails it. They see this new account as a bridge to connect the old and new worlds of finance. It's all about integration, not a hostile takeover. It's evolution, not revolution. And if we get this right, the payoff could be huge. We're talking about boosting America's economic leadership, giving consumers better protections, and most importantly, making sure the US dollar stays the king in the digital age. It could even become the gold standard for how central banks all over the world should work with these new digital assets. So the blueprints are on the table. The vision for a modern, safer, and more connected financial system has been laid out, plain and simple. The only question left is, will the Federal Reserve pick up these tools and actually start building that bridge to the future?
And this is exactly why everyone should lock in on what's happening with the OCC and these new major proposals from the Fed, because this is showing us that major key players and orchestrators of our US financial system are ready to lock in on innovation to modernize the US payment system. Again, this is an initiative that didn't just happen overnight. It's not happening just over the last 12 months. No, this has been something that they've been planning and working towards for years. Like, for an example, the US Faster Payments Council. They've been around since roughly like the middle of I want to say 2016. Maybe I'm a little bit off on the dates there, but I know that they've been around since roughly prior to 2020. So this has been something that's been in progress for a while. And of course, yes, Ripple has been there every step of the way. So in my opinion, I think that the most logical setup here is, I think that Ripple gets full approval of their National Trust Bank Charter license. I also believe that Ripple gets approval of their Fed Master account. Even if it's the skinny master account, it doesn't matter. I still believe that this is going to be massive for Ripple to have that integration into the US Federal Reserve system. This is going to be a game changer for ROUSD. And yes, just like Bank XRP is saying here, this will cement XRP as that premier bridge asset. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because I'm free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out, guys.